Hi, and welcome to another Odd Job Motors Test Reports. Once again talking about one of my favorite motors, the West Bend made and sold by originally Sears Elgin 2 horsepower. As we've talked about on other videos, this was first offered in 1952 and was a 1 3/4 inch bore by 1 9/16 inch stroke for 3.76 cubic inch displacement. Motors were originally offered. You had to wrap a line around the top to pull start them. And then starting in 1955, they offered a recoil starter, which was an improvement over the original model. Motor remained pretty much the same. It's air-cooled, and it also has, down in the lower unit here, a little tube that water goes up to just help cool off the leg here. Sears dropped the West Bend brand, West Bend manufactured motors in the late 1950s and in 1960, and West Bend came out with their own motors, and the 3.5 horsepower Shrimp was an improvement on the original 2 horsepower, and they did that by increasing the bore to 2 1/16, and it remained 1 9/16 stroke, but now had 5.18 cubic inches, and it actually really did have a whole horse and a half more than the 2 horsepower did. These motors perform much better. In 1965, Chrysler bought out West Bend, and they basically sold the same exact motor with their name on it. This is a 1968 example. And we've talked about how the Yamaha copied these motors, and even Clinton copied them as well. And in one of my earlier videos on the Yamaha, I showed all those motors. Well, I finally was able to find sort of the last of the Mohicans here. And this is a 3.6 Chrysler, and it was sold from 1970 until 1976, although some documentation does say 1977. I'm not actually sure that they were produced in 1977. This motor was called the Swinger, obviously a homage to the Dodge Dart Swingers of the 1970s. And obviously you can see it had some changes that were made. This fiberglass cover being one. It has a large steel gas tank that's down in it inside. And the throttle is placed on the side here. Has a push-pull fuel valve and choke on the front here. And then the biggest difference is that for some reason Chrysler decided that they'd add a water pump. So instead of having a little tube that's in the prop wash, it actually has an impeller in here. I have members Jim Moffitt to thank for finding this motor. He found this on the Craigslist up in New Hampshire. These motors, while they were pretty common in the 1970s, by today they're actually all been used up. A lot of people ran them on 50 to 1, and that pretty much killed them off. I also have to thank Gary Sonnenschein, who picked this motor up for me. It actually ended up being just a few miles from his work, and so I thank him for that. And then I have to thank a post on the AOMCI board and a member whom I've never met before, whose name's Tom Murray, out in Minnesota. He saw my post and was kind enough to look around in his local Mercury dealer and found me an impeller for this, which is something that's extremely hard to find, so I have him to thank for that. Let's put it in the test tank. We'll take it for a quick run here. Have to excuse me because I'm doing the camera at the same time here as operating the motor. That back into frame a little bit. Pull the fuel valve. Shouldn't need to use choke because I didn't have it running a little while ago. It sounds exactly the same as the 1952 Elgin did, basically because it's the same motor. See the water pump doing its job there. The ones with the splash tube don't do a very good job cooling in my test tank. guy runs great. It's got a little different carburetor as well. It's got a Tillotson that's a lot more advanced than the old MD carburetor that the other motors have. Unfortunately, the ID plate on this motor is missing. I think it's a 1975 model, just judged by the graphics and a few others, the paint scheme and stuff like that. Uses an H8J spark plug, Champion spark plug, and I run it. It originally was recommended to run it on 25:1 using air-cooled, or actually using TCW3 Chrysler oil. I don't do that. I actually use 16:1 in all of these motors because they're so prone to wear on the bearings and on the cylinder walls. This motor in 1975 cost $315. Brand new was the suggested list price on it. That's about all I can tell you about the Chrysler 3.6 Swinger. This pretty much covers the entire run of these motors. As I said, in 1976 or 77 they were dropped. It was replaced by a single-cylinder water-cooled model, and I think that the West Bend Power Bee, which was a go-kart engine and used for small commercial applications and things like that, it kind of lived on until the 1980s. But that was pretty much the end of the line for this fine motor. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick tour of the 1975 Chrysler 3.6. We'll see you out on the water.